Hey there, thinkers! So welcome back to Critical Hit. My name is Est, and after what feels like an eternity of drama, delays, and one PR disaster after another, Disney has finally done it. They dropped the full trailer for the live-action Snow White remake. Yep, the movie nobody asked for, but somehow got anyway. Like, we all knew the reaction would be rough. Like watching a car crash in slow motion, but wow. I mean, who could have predicted the sheer scale of the disaster? It's like they took every bit of the fan backlash, ignored it, and said, you know what, let's make it a whole lot worse. Well, bravo Disney, truly a masterclass in miscalculation. However, I have a few things to say here, but before I do, we have a small request. If you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button, smashing that like, and ring the bell to be notified for our next video. We would greatly appreciate this, since this will help us appease those YouTube algorithm gods, so we thank you. Now, let me give you our thoughts on this, and let's get into it. Now, at the time of making this video, the Snow White trailer had the honor of raking up a jaw-dropping 514,000 dislikes, while barely managing to scrape together 22,000 likes. That's not just a bad ratio, that's a spectacular fail. Now, let's put this into perspective. Even The Little Mermaid, a film that sparked a massive wave of online outrage, pulled in 2 million dislikes, but it still had 375,000 likes. Not exactly a win, but that's one like for every 4 dislikes. It's not great, but at least a few people weren't completely horrified. Then we get to, well, Snow White. And it's an absolute disaster. We're talking a catastrophic 22 dislikes for every single like. That's not a ratio. That's a public execution. Like, at this point, we might as well crown it the worst performing movie trailer in history. Like, Disney, you've really outdone yourself here. It's like they dropped the trailer and forgot to invite anyone who actually enjoyed it. And the level of failure here is almost impressive. Like, almost like a masterpiece of disaster. And let's face it, this is a PR nightmare in the making, and Disney, well, they've earned every bit of it. Oh, and we already knew how this was going to play out online, because certain publications and people will somehow manage to blame all the dislikes on the toxic fandom or bigotry. But let's be real for just a split second here. This video is here to cut through the nonsense and give you the actual reasons this movie is tanking and why the majority of viewers are completely unimpressed. And no, contrary to what you'll hear from the media, it's not political, so let's leave that mess aside for just a split moment. And the CGI for the dwarves, absolutely horrendous. You don't need to be a bigot to look at those dwarves and think, what in the actual digital disaster is this? And don't even get me started on the dark forest. It just looks like someone got carried away with Photoshop. And when the whole point of the movie is supposed to be a live action Snow White, so why on earth would you drown it in cheap over the top CGI? It just makes zero sense to me. Come on, Disney is the self-proclaimed champions of diversity, who really outdid themselves this time. They had a golden opportunity to cast actors with dwarfism in substantial roles for a blockbuster film, giving them high-paying gigs and real visibility. But instead of seizing that moment, they opted to serve up this absolute disaster of a film. You would think that they'd be all about inclusivity, right? But no, they dropped the ball on this one. And then, when the internet rightfully roasted them for missing that mark, What did they do? They kicked the talented actors that they had to the curb and decided that, you know what, CGI dwarves were the solution. And let me tell you that these CGI dwarves are an abomination, looking like complete nightmare fuel. And honestly, it's like they tried to push every possible boundary of how cringeworthy a Hollywood blockbuster can get. Like, Disney really showed us the true meaning of diversity, didn't they? Oh, and let's just sit back and marvel at the sheer creativity behind the Snow White remake, except plot twist. They've totally ditched one of the most important parts of the original story. Like, you know, the plot line that made Snow White, well, Snow White. Apparently, all the magic and all the charm and all the history of the classic fairy tale aren't as important as their bold new vision. But wait, the lead actress gave us the real gem here in a previous interview.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
Maybe during the reshoots, they suddenly decided to give the whole following the original story thing a second thought. Like, who knew that could be a good idea, right? But of course, anyone who dares to be upset that the Snow White movie doesn't even bother to follow the actual Snow White story is suddenly toxic or bigoted, because that's totally the most logical reaction, right? If you really hated the original movie so much, then why even bother with a remake? Why not just create an entirely different story and leave Snow White out of it? Oh, right. That's probably because they're banking on the name recognition, while totally disregarding the very essence of what made the movie iconic in the first place. Like, seriously, come on. It's not hard. Write a new original fairy tale where you can make it about whatever you want it to be about, because otherwise it's just going to come across as though you're disrespecting the original story and only using it for its name and marketing value. However, that's certainly backfired, as the movie has possibly had the worst marketing in movie history. And it doesn't take a genius to know that the lead actress is saying that they didn't like the original movie and only watched it once as a kid is not going to be the best way to promote your film.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again.
Oh, please, let's be real here. No matter where you land on the political spectrum, like, you've got to admit that having the lead actress take her opinions on a highly sensitive political conflict and slap them onto a teaser trailer for a movie was maybe not the best. A questionable decision at the very least. It's like she thought, hey, what better way to unite the fan base than by jumping straight into a hot button issue? Well, spoiler alert. Because that's not exactly how it works, especially when her co-star happens to be from one of the countries directly involved in the conflict. It's almost as if she wanted to stir the pot, maybe. And honestly, this isn't about politics. It's about basic logic. By attaching that kind of commentary to a movie that's supposed to be a shared experience, she ensured it was divisive by nature. So no surprise that people who don't share her views are now fired up and directing their anger at her, and by extension, the film. It's almost like they weren't looking for a lecture with their popcorn, but I mean, like, who could have predicted that, right? Of course, she's absolutely entitled to her opinion. No doubt about it. But maybe next time she can keep her own thread rather than attaching to a trailer for a movie that has zero connection to whatever conflict she's ranting about. It's like trying to sell me a sandwich while you're stuffing your shoe in my face. Completely unrelated. And honestly, unnecessary. And let's not even get started on that trailer. Between the vague storyline storyline that screams, "We're not confident about this," and the frantic cutscenes, it's clear that Disney is trying to distract us from how awful the visuals actually look. Like, I mean, if you're cutting between shots faster than I can scroll past a boring post, you've got to be hiding something, right? I mean, this kind of just looks like another Disney train wreck in the making. Like, this has nothing to do with bigotry. Like, diverse movies have raking cash for ages. So come on, let's stop with that tired excuse. And honestly, the real problem is like Disney's boneheaded decisions and the fact that the film looks like complete garbage. It's not politics, dipshits. People are calling it the massive dumpster fire that is the trailer. It seriously looks like they tossed the 1937 animation character into an AI generator and hit photorealism, and then completely ignored the fact that this looks like a bad trip into an uncanny valley. Like, whoever thought turning these beloved characters into creepy, lifeless versions of themselves was a good idea might need to get their head checked. At the end of the day, only time will tell whether this movie will succeed or not. However, those are my thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And hey, before you go, subscribe to our channel, smash that like button, and ring the bell to be notified for our next video. As always, this is Est, and I'm signing off now. So I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!